Hello and welcome to the National Leadership Briefing. My name is Doug Sharpe and I will be your host for today. It is Friday, March the 7th, 2025, and we are well into the year. For those of you who are just joining us today for the first time, welcome. We're excited about having you here. We'd love to have you join us again. And remember, you can't just figure everything out after one briefing. You've got to get on board, stick around for about 6 months, spend some time with us, get to know us, get to understand who we are and what we're doing here, why we're doing what we're doing, and how we're doing it. And you'll find it's real effective if you stick around long enough to discover it. So now let me tell you what you can do also if you're brand new to the briefing is you can go back to previous briefings. We have them posted on our YouTube channel. That's the National Leadership Briefing YouTube channel. And I'm assuming that you are signed up to receive if you're here today, you're signed up to receive the post briefing notes. I'll make sure you have a link to that YouTube channel there so you can find our January briefing, for example, where January we did an entire briefing on getting started right. If you are brand new to the briefing and you want to know how to get started right and where to be focusing your attention and spending your time, you will see that all in the January briefing. The February briefing that we did is also there, and that I encourage you to catch up on as well, because there we talked about dealing with some tough stuff, we called it, things that are a little bit more challenging to deal with. And you know what? Why not? Let's get those conversations out on the table early so that you know that we are willing and able to take on the tough situations that we have to deal with here in Canada right now. So I encourage you to do that, but welcome. For the first little while, obviously, just relax. If you're note takers, don't be too furiously taking notes, because again, you will get post notes after the briefing today that will have all the information that we cover here today. So what are we going to cover today? Well, today, we're talking about war and the fact that we are perhaps in need of preparing for that. That's obviously what we want you to do here. We want you to drill and train. And we're not talking about kinetic warfare. We're not talking about getting into fights with people, but we're talking often about the wars, the daily wars that we have to deal with, those who oppose our worldview, those who do not share our views and values, and those that war with us. Now, we aren't warring with them, but that doesn't mean we're not in a war. It means that we are not out seeking war. We're not out looking for a fight, but war is often brought to our doorstep. An expression of war in our society is at election time. It's a war of ideas that are shared at election time and decisions that are made. And if you don't posture yourself and accept the fact that you are engaged in a battle, then oftentimes we'll take too passive a stance and we won't accomplish the objectives and the mission that we're set out to, not by the earthly mission. I'm talking about our eternal mission, that while we're here on earth, we want to be able to love our neighbor, to obey God, to deploy principles that are Christian principles in the Bible, and to help bring prosperity to our neighbor and to love our neighbor in that way. So these are the things that we do. We're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about why we go to war, how we go to war. We're going to talk about the ultimate goal of the way we war, because oftentimes, especially around election time, people have this tendency to believe that our objective and our goal, our mission, is to win. Now, that is not the primary focus. Now, it is a great thing to have as a byproduct of your efforts, is if your ideas and the things that you want to advance into the conversations at election time dominate, but that is not necessarily, you can't just translate it to we're out there looking for a win. Okay, that's not it. We're going to take a look at some history as well that we need to acknowledge when we're talking about political warfare. Now, the battlefield is a landscape that we need to understand. So you study the battlefield in war, you make sure that you understand what has gone on before, the lessons that you can learn from it, and perhaps some of the victories and defeats of the past that are going to impede or help your advance forward in future battles. So you need to understand the history of it. We're going to talk about friendly fire. Now, sadly, that is when sometimes you accidentally become a victim by someone someone who's on your own side. So that's friendly fire. We're going to take a look at disinformation and distraction and the enemy's desire to knock you off mission with those tools. We're going to talk about the importance of maintaining supply lines to the front lines of the battle during a political war or election, as we call it. We're also going to talk about the tactics and strategies that are deployed by those who don't share your worldview, so that you understand them a little bit better. But we're also going to take a look at some tactics and strategies that we've encouraged you to deploy while in the battle, so that you're better equipped to advance through the battle. So, and then finally, we're going to finish it up with an all-important update on a national prayer strategy that is being deployed here in our nation. Super important that we remember. As you can see by our service dashboard behind us here, everything we do is wrapped up in a circle and an envelope of prayer. And so we want to make sure that we acknowledge that and make sure that we keep that a priority here on the National Leadership Briefing. All right, we're going to come right back after this and get started. And we hope you are going to enjoy the next hour here with us. I'm going to make sure we get you right out at the top of the hour. And thanks so much again for joining us. Back in a flash.
Once every year, the 11th month, on the 11th day at the 11th hour, we stand in unity to commemorate the end of World War I and to honor the great sacrifice of those who fought to preserve our freedoms. In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses row on row. O Canada, are you still a country worth dying for? Do we honor our fallen heroes? What were their hopes, dreams, and aspirations? Did they believe that we should be free to raise our children the way we want? Did they give their lives to defend our right of belief and freedom of religion? Did they consider Canada to be a place that would protect the citizens, especially the vulnerable? Was freedom truly worth dying for? That we should not be enslaved by massive debt heaped upon our children? Yes, these freedoms were worth dying for. Today, we continue to honor those who serve our country, lest we forget and fall victim to a tyranny that is eager to rise once again. Yesterday's freedoms were worth dying for. Do we now call them privileges only for them to be taken away? Oh Canada, what is freedom worth today? Lest we forget and no longer stand on guard. Do we wear poppy while paving a road of oppression right through Flanders fields? No. We wear poppy because we remember them. We stand with their brothers and sisters in arms, and we honor them by preserving the freedoms that they fought to preserve. World War I was deemed the war to end all wars, but we know this was not the last of wars. To this day, brave men and women take a stand, and we stand with them. We stand on guard with those who choose to sacrifice their well-being to preserve our freedoms. We don't forget why we wear poppy while we're wearing a poppy. We remember. Come on, Canada, now is the time more than ever. Stand up and wear your poppy proud, lest we forget.
Okay, well, let's get started here today. It is, again, good to be talking about war and battles, but we're going to do it with a smile on our face, okay? We are not grumpy warriors. We are happy warriors here on the National Leadership Briefing, and we've got lots to be excited about. We've got a great God who loves us, and we love him, and we've got a wonderful earth that he's gifted to us. He's given us all kinds of beautiful relationships with people, and yes, there are some challenges, and there are going to be some difficult times out there, but I have to say that some of the greatest battles here on earth will just seem so insignificant to the eternal victory that we're going to all have together. So just remember that as we're going through some of these conversations about being at war. Some of the things that we're going to talk about today are actually going to test your flesh, and I can tell because I've run into lots of people who, when they start taking a look at some of the folks who perhaps don't share our worldview or don't share our views and values when it comes to elections and political conversations, it's really easy to fall into that fleshly battle. And so, again, I encourage you to keep our hearts guarded, make sure that we're postured correctly, and remembering that we don't war against flesh. We actually war against the powers and principalities. And so we're going to be staying in that heart, with that heart today. So let's talk about why. Why do we actually want to run towards the battle? Why would we at election time want to run forward as Christians in Canada towards engaging in something like political warfare? Well, one of the greatest reasons is because It is the actual battlefield. It is the landscape where ideas compete. This is what we teach and train here on the National Leadership Briefing all the time is that we believe that we've got some really great ideas. We've got some really great principles that when they're deployed, when they're put into place, when they're activated in society, that they produce prosperity in the lives of our neighbor, and we're called to love our neighbor. Now, we express them here on the briefing oftentimes as being in support of the four pillars, where we see things like in the first pillar, when we say that parents have the right to raise their children the way they want, it's because we believe that a child will prosper when raised by his parents or her parents. We believe that parents know and love their child far more and far better than any civil government bureaucrat could. So we believe that it is to the advantage of the child and the parents and the family to have parents raise the children. So that's a Christian principle that if it's not applied, if somebody at election time has an idea that they want to advance a different view of the family and parental authority and who should raise kids, we want to be there to have that conversation and to put our idea forward and let it compete on that battlefield. So that's why we run towards the battle. Obviously, we want to make sure also for the second pillar that those we elect to serve us in civil government, if we're going to make this statement that we expect them to respect and defend our right of belief and freedom of religion once they're elected, well, there's no better time to have that conversation than with the candidates that are at war or in the battle at election time, is to get in there and say, just want to make sure we're clear that you are going to respect and defend my right of belief and freedom of religion if you are elected to serve as a member of parliament in the House of Commons. So this is, again, another great reason why. Another one, if you take a look at the third pillar, I mean, there's just no shortage of when you got the four pillars right behind us. The laws and policies of civil government are established by the lawmakers, and the lawmakers are elected at the federal level in federal elections, which is what we're heading into. The battle ahead is a federal election. And those lawmakers, if they're not crystal clear when they are seated in their seats in the House of Commons, that it is the priority for them to provide for the safety and security of citizens with the laws and policies that they pass and enact, if they're not crystal clear on that, because you've told them prior to the election, then they will make errors. They will make mistakes, and they need to constantly be reminded. And we've seen this happen in Canada as they've passed marijuana legislation that is horrendous. It's incredibly damaging and destructive to citizens. And we've seen euthanasia. Euthanasia is now, euthanasia in Canada, I think we're up over 80,000 now. 80,000 people have been euthanized here in Canada. 1 in 5 deaths in Canada end in euthanasia now, and we are leading the world as a nation in euthanasia deaths. So how's that working out for us? It's not working out at all. So we've got this situation here where we've got a conversation taking place. We consider it a priority to provide for the safety and security of the citizens, and we want to have that conversation with our candidates at election time. And then finally, of course, fiscal responsibility. How about children who are born into families that are not really free? They're actually in bondage the moment they're born because civil government has slapped a yoke of debt on each and every one of them that they're going to carry for the rest of their lives. They're going to be the ones paying for the debt in the form of taxation, and this excessive taxation that's already on us all is only going to increase and create a greater debt and debtor of our children. So we need to be conscious of these things. We need to engage in the conversations at election time. So that is why we run towards the battle. Now, how do we run towards the battle? That's the next thing we wanted to talk about here today. Pardon me, I got itchy nose today. It must be election time. Maybe every time my nose itches, maybe it's because it's election time. I don't know. But how do we actually engage? Well, I'm hoping if you're someone who's been on the briefing for a while, you've already picked it up that we don't just wait for the election to come to us and then begin to prepare. We need to be preparing all the time in our individual lives, lives, in our families, in our churches. We need to be getting together in groups, and we need to be engaging in the processes of society, like the political processes that prepare us to meet that opportunity to have our voices heard at election time. So that's why we had that big design that this behind me when we opened up the briefing today, is because each of these categories here, we're hoping that, for example, you're on the national leadership briefing, so that means you're better prepared when elections come along. You've got a citizen action group in your church, which is the infrastructure that is already in place and has been serving your church family to help your pastors and your church leaders navigate the complexities of the political landscape. We hope that you've also got your community transformation committees in place, and those are just the people that have a heart for their immediate communities, because they are the ones that gather the intelligence about what kind of harms and what kind of challenges the community is experiencing. That intelligence that's gathered by community transformation committees of the things that are really a problem in your community, that is important to share at election time with the candidates. We also encourage parents advisory committees. We know that the authority of parents it's so powerful. But if you get a group of parents together in a church and you formed a parents advisory committee and you're speaking to candidates as a group about the things that are important to you, like the authority of parents to raise their children the way they want, these things can be constructed between elections. You don't want to just all of a sudden go, gosh, I wish I had a parents advisory council in place because we got an election. And of course, we also want to make sure that we're bringing the group or the body of research together that helps us to exercise our kingdom influence with the education and training materials that we need. How do we advance the principles of the kingdom of God if we don't know about the kingdom of God? As a matter of fact, I'm going to actually give every one of these, if you get in touch with me, this Worldview book by Catherine Gallagher, look at that. Look at how small that book is. Look at that. You could knock that off in an afternoon, but this Worldview book is an example of kingdom influence training and education materials that are available to you out there that helps you between election times to drill and train and understand your foundations, your posture, your stance, your approach, the things that are going to be you're going to need to know at election time. One of them, of course, is Kingdom Worldview, right? That's just an example. So we are hoping that you're preparing between elections. But hey, if you're new on the briefing today, we also make an accommodation for people that all of a sudden wake up one day and go, wait a second, I've got authority. I've got authority as a citizen of Canada. I've got authority as a constituent living in my community. I've got authority as a parent to speak, and I want to exercise that authority. And if you're brand new today and you're just waking up to that reality and you're excited about the opportunities that you may have, even though you don't know how to or what to, you're in the right place because you're on the National Leadership Briefing. And over time, we are going to be equipping you to go out there and to exercise the influence that you have as a person with authority. So relax. It's okay. Now, we are this close to a federal election, so make sure you're doing your best to engage and do everything you can to catch up, but just chill, man. It's not going to be perfect right off the get-go. All right, so that's how we do it, is we prepare ahead of time, in advance. Now, I'm going to be providing you some more tools and a little later on in the briefing here today of things that you can do immediately, whether you've got experience and you're prepared or you don't have any experience or prepared. So stick around, because we're going to put some tools in your hands that are going to be really actionable. You're going to be able to take these and wield them right away, not only in your own personal life, in your families, but also in your local churches. All right, so we'll come right back after this quick break and we'll get started. I want to do a little bit of a history lesson. We're going to take a look at something, again, that might test your flesh. It might provoke and prod your flesh, but we are going to take a look at something that is a part of the battlefield of the political landscape ahead of us. So we got to make sure we understand this as we're moving forward. All right, back in a flash. These are the things that we believe in. First, that parents have the right to raise their children the way they want. Second, that those we elect to serve us in civil government must respect and defend our right of belief and freedom of religion. Number three, that the laws and policies of civil government must provide for the safety and security of the citizens, especially the vulnerable among us. And number four, that it is inappropriate to heap debt upon the backs of our children and future generations. They came from you. They're your pillars. They're the things that you believe. So far I've told you that we're going to go into battle, a political battle. That's unattractive. I've told you that we're going to have to prepare. That sounds like a lot of work. And now I'm actually suggesting that we actually take a look back at previous political battles and outcomes to learn from them. Now, man, oh man, I know I'm stretching you today. If you are not someone who has made the connection that we must engage in political battles as they come before us in Canada, like the upcoming election, if you aren't convinced that there's a good why for us to do that, then I can see how you might say that's an awful lot of negative stuff to focus on. But you know what? It's important that you stick around for a little while longer then, because I'm going to prove it to you. I'm going to prove to you that it's extremely important to put in the work, to look at the tough stuff, to let our flesh get tested, and to keep moving forward towards the battle. Do not disengage. You must engage. And let me tell you why. I'm going to tell you a story, a little bit of a history lesson, something that happened in one of the major political parties here in Canada, one of the choices that you're going to have in the upcoming federal election, and that's the Conservative Party of Canada. So let's just review a bit of the history, a portion of it, and I'm going to demonstrate for you why it is important to understand that and why engaging in these processes moving forward, it can be even more important than you originally thought. All right, back in the beginning, the Conservative Party didn't even exist. There were two parties. One was called the Canadian Alliance Party at the federal level, and the other one was called the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada. Now, those were two different parties with two different policy books and two different sets of ideas. And what happened was that the Canadian Alliance had a leadership election where Stockwell Day and Stephen Harper ran off against each other, and Stephen Harper won the leadership of the Canadian Alliance. Shortly thereafter, Stephen Harper came to a national council meeting, and I was a national councillor of that party. I was actually serving as an Alberta national councillor. It's like the national governing board of the party at that time. And I can remember Stephen Harper walking in as leader of the party, the Canadian Alliance, and he said that we must build a credible governing alternative to the current Liberal government, because there are many things that the Liberal government was doing that was a contradiction to our views and values. So we needed to build the Canadian Alliance up to a point where they could become a credible governing alternative to that then liberal government that was in power. And that was back before 2003. What he also did was he ended up engaging in a conversation with the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada, the other political party on the right side of the political spectrum, if you don't mind me using that term, right, and suggested and came into what was called an agreement in principle, where the two parties would come together to form a new party and work together. And that's exactly where the Conservative Party of Canada came from. They actually brought the Conservative Party the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada and the Canadian Alliance together. And Stephen Harper, it was decided through a process, an electoral process, he would become the leader of the new Conservative Party of Canada. Now, shortly after that, the party actually went into an election. It was like within a couple of months, Paul Martin called an election in Canada. And the Conservative, and I want to remind you, it's an election strategy that was deployed at that time, which was actually kind of exciting because I'd never heard this language before. I was a brand new Christian at that time, and I was kind of new to politics, actually. For a guy that was a national councillor, I was still really green. And I watched the Liberals deploy the strategy, which was called the hidden agenda strategy. And for those of you who've been around for a while, you might remember it, is that they kept claiming that this new Conservative Party, although they were presenting themselves as this, it was really a hidden agenda they weren't showing everybody. And once they were going to get into power at election time, they were going to transform the nation into this extremist right-wing, really social conservative, kind of obviously Christian. At that point in time, that's where all of a sudden they started to attack Christians and their views, and that was the sort of the beginning of Christian bigotry in Canada. From my perspective, I hadn't seen it to that degree ever before, but it started right there. So the hidden agenda election happened, and the Liberals managed to eke out a slight majority. It was like 124 seats to 90, or was it 134 seats to 90? 99, I think it was. That's right. 99 Conservatives were in the House, and the Liberals had the majority. So they had a minority government. So they won the election. Now, what was interesting about that is that we all went to the next policy convention for the Conservative Party of Canada. And it was at that convention that we were going to define ourselves in the form of a policy book. Like every party has a policy book that they get together and that they ratify and modify and they edit and they vote on. Everybody's got these cards that they hold up. They can vote yes or no at the conventions, and they bring delegates from across the country. This is my delegate pass from 2018. I've gone to every single convention because it's an opportunity where you and I can directly vote on what the policies are of individual parties. So if you can get in the room and get elected as a delegate, then you are able to vote directly, yes or no, up or down, whether you want what the policy is on euthanasia, abortion, all these different things. So anyway, the founding convention of the Conservative Party of Canada happened, and it was back in 2005. And at that convention, there was this belief, and I got sucked into it too, because we had just come off a loss. The Conservative Party of Canada was unable to unseat the Liberals during the election. The Liberals had claimed that we had this hidden agenda. So there was this belief that we needed to define ourselves on the things that we're not going to do. And one of the things that came up at the last minute on the convention floor and kind of caught everybody a little bit off guard was the need they felt to advance this one particular policy within the policy book of the Conservative Party of Canada that stated that a Conservative government would not advance any or support any legislation that regulated abortion. Well, here in Canada, we have no abortion laws. We are the only nation in the world, actually one of two nations in the world, that have zero abortion laws. You can have an abortion, you can end a pregnancy right up to the full term of pregnancy here in Canada. And so there to say that we want to say that we're not going to do something to define ourselves so that they can't hit us with that same stick at the next election, claiming that, because remember, this is the accusation of leftists and left-leaning governments, is always that conservative governments and right-wing governments that are socially conservative, they always say that we want to take away the rights of women to make their own decisions. That's what they always say. So we decided, as in the policy convention, by voting on it, that we would put in the policy book this one policy that said we will not advance protections in the form of legislation as a conservative government. So at election time, if somebody accused us of that, we could say, no, look, we passed it at a convention. Now, it's something I deeply regret that I was even in the room for. I'm really, looking back, you just go, my gosh, like that is just some terrible. Thank God for the mercy, His mercy and grace and forgiveness. But because that is something that when you're in that room, you bring that with you. And for years now, we have worked to try and get it out of the book, but it remains in the book. It remains in the book. And to this day, this particular belief within the Conservative Party of Canada that they are not going to ever advance any kind of protection for preborn children in the form of regulated abortion law in Canada is present. It is present in your modern day decision making that as you go into the election, you need to decide, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to, as an individual citizen with citizen authority and the right to cast a vote on election day, what are you going to do about it? Well, we're going to talk about the things that you can do about it a little bit later on here in the briefing today, but I wanted to make sure that you understood that that is a present danger. A clear and present danger is in the decision making that we have before us in the next federal election. Now, I told you I was going to talk to you about friendly fire as well as a part of this segment. Friendly fire, remember, is that if you are a tier one operator and you are like out there and you're in the field and you're on mission and you are working to advance with all of the people that are on your team and you're trying to accomplish very specific mission objectives, and then all of a sudden one of your own artillery shells lands on top of you and takes you out of battle. That's friendly fire. That is when it's not the enemy combatant that takes you out, but it's somebody on your own team. Well, I wanted to let you know of another reality that you need to be conscious of as we move forward to this next election, where one of the choices is the Conservative Party of Canada. And that is that we have experienced some friendly fire incidents within the Conservative Party of Canada as we are all working to advance a credible governing alternative to the Liberal government that governs today, as we are working to prepare that team to take to the election. We obviously wanted to advance from our Christian community candidates that share our views and values when it comes to the issue of life. People that share our views on the need to provide some form of legislation for protecting preborn children. And obviously, those Christian views and values we wanted to take into the House of Commons so that it can, obviously, that's a great place to have, again, those kinds of conversations, is because that's where those ideas compete, is in the House of Commons, where it's debated and you get to establish laws and policies. So it's really important to us to be able to put forward candidates that are going to be able to run in the election. However, they have fallen prey and victim to friendly fire. From within the Conservative Party of Canada, some candidates are not being allowed to advance in through the process on a level playing field. We sometimes call it shenanigans in the political world. We go, okay, the shenanigans. They're just trying to tip the scale a bit. They're trying to maybe get a different preferred candidate. And they'll even tell you that all these reasons why they've got the right to not allow certain candidates to run. But the reality is that some views are less appealing to the people who make the rules than other views. And sometimes they do put the finger on the scale and they do tip it slightly. So to give another candidate who doesn't have the same Christian views regarding abortion and pro-life views, they will tip the scale and choose a different candidate. So that's another reality that we have to face as we move forward to make decisions as we move forward towards this next federal election. Now, if you think what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to rile you up and get you all mad at the Conservative Party of Canada, nope. As a matter of fact, everybody that knows me, that's been working with me in the political realm for the last 25 years, everybody knows me. I don't get mad. I get a little bit smoked at certain things. I get a little bit wound up on certain things more than others, but I don't get mad. I just get strategic. I get tactical. I immediately start working around the problem or through the problem, because if you don't work the problem, then you're not going to achieve your mission objective. And that's what we're all about on the National Leadership Briefing. That's our mindset, is if that's the reality of the battlefield, now we just need to be able to work through the problem. So that's what we are going to do a little bit further in the briefing as well, and ongoingly as we move towards the election. All right, so that is a little piece of history, something we're going to need to deal with. There's a little bit of information about friendly fire there, and we're going to end up moving on now. We're going to be talking about, in the boardroom, our weapons of war. what and our strategies, our tactics, the things that we can deploy to not only counter some of the challenges that we have ahead of us, but also gain some advantage as we move further in the mission. All right. I hope that's helpful for you to know. Obviously, if you have any more questions about that, then we'll move forward after that. But let's get over in the boardroom, and because you know I love it there, and we'll continue on. Back in a moment.
The bear has been poked. It's time to wake up from our slumber
and stand together, united as one. One family, one body, one church.
We will not walk past the vulnerable.
Say nothing, do nothing, and turn a blind eye.
We are citizens of a great nation.
We are good Samaritans to our neighbors. You are not alone.
We are the largest unified voice in Canada. So we stand united. This is our rally cry. We are Christ to our nation. This is our battle cry. He shall have dominion from sea to sea and from the river unto the ends of the earth. Righteousness will reign. Justice will prevail. We are united.
Okay, it's good to be here. Boy, I tell you, if this is your first time, coming into the boardroom with me, I'm just going to let you know, I get excited when I come in here because this is where we drill. This is where we train. This is where we up our game. This is where we get better at what we do, is because we actually focus on the things that we need to know to increase our influence in the areas that so if we're working right now on having more influence in the upcoming federal election, this is where it starts, is in the boardroom. This is where we go to start learning, gathering the information we need, doing the training that we need now, because this election that's coming up is right ahead of us. If this is your first time, or if you haven't got a lot of experience, that's okay, because it is still the starting point. We'll get ready for the next election then. If we're not entirely perfect this election, we're going to get better for the next election. So don't worry about it, but keep training. Keep drilling. All right, before we get started on the board here, I just want to give you the lay of the land, a little bit more detail about exactly where we're at here in the church in Canada, because it's important to not fool ourselves as we are going into a federal election, exactly where we're at and what our current circumstances are. So let's gather some intelligence from a survey that our organization did with the people that we serve generally in the church. Now, it's not always specific. They're not necessarily people that are on the briefing, but if we come into contact with a church and we're allowed to survey the group of people in the church, then they will give us this intelligence, give us this feedback, and we'll be able to share with you. This is interesting. Survey, 98% of the people that we served said that their current federal member of parliament, that's conservative or liberal, does not represent their views and values on the issues that they believe were important, or has not defined to them their positions on those issues. So think about that for a second. 98% of the people out there, they just have no idea what the current federal member of parliament's views are on the things that are important to them. Issues like the four pillars, the principles that undergird the four pillars, are really important for you to understand what the federal member of parliaments and the candidates that are about to run in the upcoming election, what their positions are. I mean, you need to ask the questions. As a matter of fact, we've got a tool here that I'm going to share in the post-briefing notes today, and it's called On Election Day. And on Election Day, this is just a little cheat sheet for you here to actually bring to candidate meetings. It just says, it's just the things that you can share with your candidate, the candidate that's standing there. You could say, on Election Day, I want a real choice. In other words, I want to know that I had the ability to nominate one of the candidates. What was I able to nominate a candidate? Was I able to cast my vote in the nomination campaign if I was a party member? Or did you appoint a candidate and just parachute them into the riding? And so I really didn't have a choice. So I want a real choice. And then on election day, I also want to vote for someone that shares my views and values. So I want to be able to evaluate, I want to be able to freely ask questions of the candidates as to whether they share my views and values. And then I also want to vote for somebody who agrees with me on the things I think are important. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for some buy-in on what I think. Now, I know a lot of people think that what they're supposed to do election time is just show up and look at the list of candidates and kind of evaluate their platforms and pick the best out of the worst. But no, on election day and leading up to election day, we define ourselves to the candidates. It's not them defining themselves to us so that we can decide. It's us defining ourselves to them and seeing if they agree with us. And if they don't, that's a totally different posture. Believe me, try it out. You'll see. And then you've got these belief statements that you can share with candidates. I believe that parents have the right to raise their children the way they want. I believe that you, as someone that that wants to be elected, I think that it's important that you respect my right of belief and freedom of religion. I think the laws and policies of civil government should prioritize the vulnerable. And it just goes on and on. And then it says, this is intention statements right here, intention statements. And the intention, it says, it is my intention on election day to vote for the candidate that will, and you go through your list. So you make sure you express to the candidates and to the political parties and to the leaders and to all those people out there, all these things that you think are important to you. So it also gives you an idea on the back here. It says, when choosing a candidate, consider the issues we face. Which candidate is going to make the better decisions for our families and our nations, and whose policies are more closely aligned with the Word of God? That is our standard. That is what so here's a whole list of things. So I'll include that in post-briefing notes, but that is a taste of what it is that we're dealing with and some of the realities of the landscape that this battle is occurring on. Okay, speaking of resources, we have on the top here, it says NLB Essentials. I'm not going to miss this opportunity to promote to you that if you have not reviewed over and over again, reviewed the NLB Essential videos that are on the YouTube channel, our National Leadership Briefing YouTube channel. You've got 4 of them there. One is called U Training. One of them is called Sphere Authority Template Training. That's this one right here. One is called Horizon Training, and they've got the 4 Pillar Training. If you watch those 4 videos, you will build a foundation under yourself that will give you a place that you can launch from into everything else that we do on the National Leadership Briefing, which is what I'm about to do here now. I'm about to actually talk to the people who have watched the Sphere Authority training video that have a foundation of understanding as to what their role and responsibility is with this U training. And I'm going to actually talk about this template right here and use it in this example. All right. So I know, again, if you're new, you didn't know that, right? So, but go and watch those videos and you'll be ready for next time and you can watch this training again. All right. So here is the Sphere Authority training template. I told you that I was going to explain to you what it was that was about to happen. And then I was going to give you some political weapons of warfare, things that you can use that are not they're not weapons that are going to hurt people. They're weapons that you can use to achieve the mission that you have to have increased influence at election time. First of all, we have to understand that this is you right here. This is self. You are given an area of responsibility while you are here on this earth and in society, and that is the limit of your authority. And within that sphere of authority and that area of responsibility, you can do all kinds of things, one of which is you can participate at election time in selecting those that will lead. Now, there's all kinds of training that goes with talking about the authority of the family, the authority of the church, the authority of civil government. But I'm going to point out now for today, one important thing for you to remember about you and election time. The common misconception at election time is that we give our vote to the candidate, they get elected, and they go on and do whatever they want. They just are going to go off and lead the country. That is not how it works. What happens is that we all as individuals, we gather together in tribes, in political parties, around common values and common principles and policies. And then we raise up a leader within that tribe, within that political party. For example, in the Conservative Party of Canada, it's Pierre Poilievre. The Conservative Party elected Pierre as the leader. And then the leader goes out there and casts a vision for what it is that he's going to do if he is given the reins of civil government. So what happens is they make commitment statements to us all of society, and they if they're actually elected to serve, then they should walk that out. They should do what they're said. Now, what they said they were going to do. Now, this within this area here, there are all sorts of processes that are that happen within political parties to determine who the candidates are, who the leader is, how the candidates are supported, who fundraises, membership drives, all that kind of stuff. All of those things there are done within electoral district associations, and we're going to talk about an electoral district association strategy in just a minute, because it's a key component of an election that transfers authority from individuals to civil government. Now, on that note, I just want to point out that as we at election time use a political process to transfer the authority, and that's what it is. If anybody is ever wondering what is politics? What is politics? It's simply the process by which we communicate or convey authority to civil government to then govern on our behalf in very specific areas that are mandated within the Constitution of our nation, our founding documents. So what we do is we transfer the authority. Now, do we give them the authority? No. We lend them the authority, because it is always only for a specific time. We will say that for the next 4 years or until the next election, you are granted or loaned our individual authority as citizens to govern on our behalf. And this is translated through this across this medium here in the form of what's called a mandate. So we give them a mandate to govern with our loaned authority based on what they promised they were going to do, and then they should fulfill it. It's their mandate to do it. That's what they do. So we communicate that authority over to civil government. So that is about what is about to happen here in Canada. You're about to see this transfer of authority to a new government. Now, it could be still a liberal government, but it'll be a liberal government with new players. Like they have a leadership campaign that obviously is going to produce this new leader, and you're going to have a new prime minister. One way or another, though, that person is going to have a mandate to govern from the electorate that is loaned to them. All right? Now, one thing I want to point out is an individual person has only so much authority. A family, when you start bringing a family together where you've got a husband and a wife and you've got some older kids in the family and the different levels of authority there, you have an increased measure of authority. I want to point out to everybody, though, that if you are a church and you are a church led by somebody who understands that the decisions of civil government have the possibility to either hurt or help the individual citizen in their lives, if a church leader has an active interest in participating in political processes because they know it impacts the church family, that church will have a much larger authority than the individual will. That church, who is a collection of many people and their authorities, can swing outcomes in elections. And again, it's not the focus isn't to do that to win an election. The focus is that if you actually advance in a large way your views and values into the conversation, you will influence the outcome to move towards that, whatever it is that you believe, because the person who gets elected will know you are an influence in the community that helped to get that person elected. So I just want to point out there's measures of authority now in this society, in each of these spheres of authority. Civil government, of course, the challenge that we have, keep this in mind, is that civil government has a tendency to take the authorities that we grant them and then they bloat civil government and they make it larger so that they actually have more authority than we granted them. They can use their powers as civil government, for example, in taxation and in legislation, to grow and protect and enshrine their own authority. So they won't feel like they have to come back and get more authority from us at election time because they're hoarding it themselves. So we've got to be careful about that too. We got to be conscious of that as we move forward. We're thinking about these things in our mind as we're moving forward into battle. Now, if you're going to go into battle, you got to understand something about not everybody is built for the same kind of battle. So you don't just take everybody and hand them a rifle and send them to the front line, because they may not be that might not be their skill set. That might not be their gifting. That might not be suit their training. So it's important that as we prepare to go forward to the election, that we call out in our midst, we call out from our communities, we call out from our church families, who is it? Who is it out there that is called to serve in this arena called politics? Who is it in the church family who feels God's call in their life to take an interest in government issues and bring that information to the church family? Because if you put the call out and say, we have a special operations team that we're forming to actually work this election, to actually participate in this election, you will see operators come forward. You will definitely see operators come forward. And those are the people that have got on their knees. They've prayed to God and said, Lord, do I have a piece of this? Is this where you want me to be? Is this what you want me to be focused on? Do you want me to go out there and take an interest in the issue of abortion and engage in the political processes and try and advance protections of children in the womb? Because Lord, if you do, if you're with me, I'm with you. Let's go. And then all of a sudden you've got a special operations team with operators. The next thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you provide them with the adequate training, which is what we do here. As soon as you get someone within your church and all of a sudden they say, you know what? I feel the tug of, I think the Lord is calling me to be engaged in politics somehow. And those are a lot of the calls that I take actually are people like that. They go, hey, I think I got confirmed. I think the Lord wants me to call you. So I go, great, let's get started, right? So that's training. We also want to make sure that we provide them with the necessary intelligence that they can apply locally in their circumstances. So we immediately go to work gathering intelligence for them based on whatever their call is. Remember, we're not here with this grand plan at the National Leadership Briefing waiting to plug everybody into it. No, what we're here doing is we're waiting for the phone to ring so that somebody calls up and says, hey, I need this because I think this is what God wants me to do. And I say, great, how can I help? That's what it is. We come alongside you in your mission on your life, in your church, in your local community, dealing with your local problems, trying to help you where you're at. We don't try to drag you out onto the political battlefield because that is not where your covering is. That is not where your anointing is. That's not where God wants you to be. God wants you to be where he wants you to be. And he wants me to be here ready to help you where you are. Okay? That's the training part of it here. Now, you're going to want to have a mission, a clearly defined mission. And this is what I was going to tell you, is I told you that the important part of this political process here are the electoral district associations. And I'm just using this as an example because this is a very, very key local mission that a lot of people can engage in their own communities, right? So you've got this individual who has a call on God, from God on their heart to get engaged. Well, the best way is to get engaged in a local electoral district association. Now, the mission can be defined in any number of different ways, but I like to call it really simply infiltrate. So you infiltrate the local electoral district association. I know that kind of sounds like a nasty word, like it's like infiltration, man. That sounds like kind of like pushy and all that stuff. No, it's actually a lot of fun. You just go, hey, how can I help? I'm infiltrating. I'm infiltrating. I'm here. What do you guys do here? How can I help? I'm kind of interested. And we teach you how to do all that and what a local electoral district association does. Then you nominate, you start gathering people around you. You start gathering people who share your views and values around you to join the electoral district association with you. And we have what's called a personal network survey, which gives you the ability to call out and reach out to people and find out what they're all about and what they feel and what they believe. And hey, if you're kind of aligned with my views and values, we could work together and join this district association together. So we nominate other members to come and join the actual association. And then our goal, of course, is to dominate. And again, don't get mad at me for the word dominate. This is war. This is battles. This is what it is. And it's friendly. We're all having fun with it. But we don't go in there to just be the mouse in the house. We go in there to be a major part of the decision-making processes of the local electoral district associations, and we go in there because we want to dominate. And you know what? That is also a word that kind of sounds like dominion, which is kind of what we're supposed to have anyway, right? So don't get mad at me for the words I'm using: infiltrate, nominate, and dominate, because that would be a very, very effective use of your time. So anybody out there got a call in their life to work locally, and I can help you get deployed into a local electoral district association. And finally, as you go out and experience and go out there and execute these missions, it's important to debrief. And that's where I come in again as well. So we always have people coming back going, hey, Doug, I went out and tried that thing you said, and it didn't work out so well. I ended up taking a couple of bullets, and I'm all injured, and I put the Band-Aids on you, get you all back out there, and you're back out there doing it. But just check back with me all the time. And I'm right there with you. I'm walking the road with you. You're not there alone. Now, if you take a look at our service dashboard, that's what that special operations part there is that you've got these special operators that are identified within your church family. They could be a part of your citizen action group. They could be in community here at the National Leadership Briefing, receiving their training. It could be a parent on a Parents Advisory Council that also feels like they want to deploy somewhere else, and they're looking for information that they can use to drill and train kingdom influence training and education materials so they can advance the kingdom of God, fulfill the responsibility of the call God's placed on their lives in the political realm. And I'm here to help, and we're here to help. That's what we're here to do. Okay. So that is now. I'm going to go back to the desk in a minute, but before I do, I want to give you an example of some of the other tools that we've got for you that you can use and that you can actually bring forward at election time. One of them is a big issue we have in front of us here in Canada is this euthanasia issue. It's out of control. We had Alex Schadenberg from the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition on the last National Leadership Briefing. He gave us some fantastic information. We have things like the 27-point checklist, things that you can go through with your members of parliament and your candidates. And you can say, look, I'm kind of concerned about all the people that are getting euthanized in Canada, and the safety, there's not really the safety rail guards that are supposed to be on the legislation. And here's a bunch of things can you just tell me what you think about these different things that I'm concerned about? And we laid it out for you there. We've also got resources like Kathy Peters. She's like one of the best anti-human trafficking educators in Canada. She lives in British Columbia, but she'll help you with all kinds of different information through her Be Amazing website, Be Amazing campaign website. I'll put that in post briefing notes as well. We've also got things like pastors and church leaders. They're going to ask the question, they always do. What am I allowed to do at election time? Am I allowed to have a candidate in and speak and whatever? So I'm going to put in the post briefing notes a document that kind of lays out the do's and don'ts. It's put together by the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada, and it's really simple bullet point stuff, and it just keeps you between the lines when it comes to the rules of what churches can and cannot do at election time. One of the things you can do is you can have an all candidates event during election. You can bring in all the candidates and you can sit them up on your church podium there, and you can ask them questions, and your church family can listen to what it is that they say about the things that are important to you. Now, it's important that you do that with the right heart and in the right framework. So that's why we produce this all candidates election event template for you. So make sure you follow that if you do bring everybody together. These are the kinds of things that we have available to you if you want to participate and engage, increase your influence at election time, and it's going to keep you safe while you're out on the battlefield, but you're going to get out there and you're going to do well because you're trained and you're executing, you're staying on mission, you're not getting distracted by all the chatter out there and the noise when the shells are going off over your head and everybody's screaming, go this way, go this way. You're on mission because you and I have been training and we know exactly what we're supposed to do, and we're working a plan. All right, great. I'm gonna have to leave it there because you know what? I just love the boardroom so much I could keep going, but I better leave it there. Let's go back to the desk and I'm gonna wrap up because we are on the home stretch. Thanks for your time so far. Back in a flash. Well, thanks for your time today. We've got a couple of quick things here, just notices here, wanted to pass on to you. First of all, I said we were going to talk about the importance of supply lines, getting those critical and valuable resources to the front lines of battle. One of the supply lines you can help with by sowing into our ministry. We have a website right over here, familyaction.ca. If you send an e-transfer to info@familyaction.ca, you will be providing resources to us so that we can help others do what God calls them to do at election time. That is what we're here to do. We're here to help, and your assistance in supplying the supply lines and supplying the troops would be much appreciated. So consider that. I'll put something in the post-briefing notes there that you can click on as well. And then finally, I just wanted to bring a scheduling note for you. March the 20th is the next call for the National Day of Prayer initiative that Faytine has worked on. We've got this upcoming call, all these calls leading up to July 12th in Ottawa, where we will be establishing in Canada a National Day of Prayer that for years and years beyond us and into our children's future, there will be this National Day of Prayer that they can honor God and pray and come together and leave a legacy. So I want to make sure you've got that information in the post-briefing notes again as well, because joining those prayer calls between now, every month until July the 12th, you will definitely bless you. That has been a blessing so far. We've had the Alberta and the BC calls. They've been great. All right, so thanks for your time today. Thank you for going to war with me, and thanks for me being on your six and you being there with me in the battle. I've appreciated your time, and I look forward to serving you on the road ahead. Until next time, though, God bless you, God bless your family, and may God continue to bless this great nation of Canada. Bye for now.
Hearts arise, a nation sings. Hope is found in higher things. In every generation, we've called in humble prayer, knowing only you can save us from the evil fowler's snare. When darkness tries to cloud our way, your light breaks through bright as day. God, keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. If we humble ourselves and pray and turn from our wicked ways, then in your grace you will hear from heaven, forgive our sins and heal our land. Father, do it again. Send revival, heal our land. Hands held high, knees to the ground. Mercy reigns, love abounds. Through every storm, through every fight, your truth remains our guiding light. With every voice, with every plea, you hear our cry for unity. God, keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. If we humble ourselves and pray and turn from our wicked ways, then in your grace you will hear from heaven, forgive our sins and heal our land. Father, do it again. Pour out your love, let peace descend. Hearts renewed, we rise and stand. Send revival, heal